Most people walked past him without really seeing him. He had become part of the background of the city, like a bench or a street light always there, rarely noticed. He slept near a bus stop where the lights stayed on all night, not because it was comfortable, but because it felt a little safer than darker corners. His clothes were worn, his beard untrimmed, and his hands rough from years of doing whatever small jobs he could find. To strangers, he was just another homeless man. But like anyone else, he had a past, a name, and a mind that hadn't stopped thinking, even when life had slowed him down. His days followed a routine that wasn't really a routine. Some mornings he would help vendors set up their stalls in exchange for leftover food. Other days he collected recyclable items to earn a few coins. Sometimes, if he was lucky, someone would offer him a short task carrying boxes, cleaning a space, anything that paid even a little. It wasn't stable, but it kept him going. He had learned to expect very little, because expecting more often led to disappointment. The city around him moved fast. Cars, buses, people with busy lives, people chasing deadlines, people scrolling through their phones as they walked. He watched it all, not with jealousy, but with a kind of quiet observation. He understood that everyone had their own struggles, even if they looked different from his. Still, there were moments when he wondered what it would feel like to have stability again, to have a place where he belonged, to not worry about where the next meal would come from. One afternoon, as the sun sat high and the heat made the pavement almost uncomfortable to touch, he was walking slowly along the side of the road, scanning the ground the way he often did. Sometimes people dropped coins, sometimes useful items, and sometimes nothing at all. It had become a habit looking down, hoping for something small that might make the day a little easier. That's when he saw it. A small, slightly crumpled piece of paper near the edge of the sidewalk. At first, he thought it was just trash, but something about it made him pick it up. It was a lottery ticket. He stared at it for a moment, not expecting much. People threw away losing tickets all the time. Still, he kept it. Not because he believed it would change anything, but because even the smallest possibility felt worth holding on to. He folded it carefully and placed it in his pocket. For the rest of the day, he didn't think about it too much. Life didn't allow for long distractions. There were more immediate concerns: food, water, a place to rest. But as evening approached and the city lights began to come on, the thought returned. What if by some chance it wasn't just another discarded ticket? He didn't have a phone or a way to check the numbers himself. So he waited. The next morning, he went to a small shop that sold lottery tickets. He hesitated outside for a moment, unsure if he would even be allowed inside. But then he stepped in anyway. The shopkeeper looked at him briefly, not unkindly, but with the usual distance people kept. The man handed over the ticket quietly and asked if it could be checked. The shopkeeper scanned it without much expectation. Then something changed. The shopkeeper's expression shifted from neutral to confused, then to surprised. He checked again, just to be sure. The numbers matched. Not a small win, not a minor prize. It was a large amount. Life-changing. For a moment, everything felt still. The noise of the city outside faded. The man stood there, trying to understand what this meant. It didn't feel real. He had spent so long living day to day that the idea of having more than enough felt almost impossible to process. The shopkeeper looked at him again, this time differently. Not as someone invisible, but as someone standing at the edge of a major change. News didn't spread immediately. The man didn't run outside shouting. He didn't celebrate loudly. Instead, he stepped out quietly, holding on to a reality that hadn't fully settled yet. He found a place to sit and think. This was the moment that would define everything that came next. He could have chosen many paths. He could have used the money to leave the city, start fresh somewhere else, focus only on himself. After everything he had been through, no one would have blamed him for that. It would have been the simplest decision, the most expected one. But his mind didn't go there first. Instead, he thought about the nights he had spent under open skies, the days he had gone without food, the people he had met along the way who were still living that reality. He thought about how easy it was for someone to fall into that situation and how hard it was to get out. He realized something important in that moment. This wasn't just about changing his life. It was an opportunity to change more than that. The process of claiming the money took time. There were formalities, paperwork, steps he had never experienced before. It was overwhelming at times, but he stayed patient. Each step brought him closer to a new reality. When the money finally came through, it felt both heavy and unreal. For the first time in years, he didn't have to worry about survival. But instead of rushing into comfort, he took a different approach. He started small. The first thing he did was secure a place to live. Not something extravagant, just a simple, clean space where he could rest without fear. That alone felt like a major shift. A door that locked, a bed that was his, a place where he could think clearly. Then he focused on understanding what to do next. He didn't have experience managing money on this scale, so he sought advice. He asked questions, listened carefully, and avoided making impulsive decisions. He knew that this opportunity could disappear just as quickly if he wasn't careful. But the real change began when he started looking beyond himself. He returned to the areas he used to stay in, not as someone in need, but as someone who understood what was needed. He spoke to people, listened to their stories, and tried to identify what could actually make a difference. Instead of giving out money randomly, he thought about solutions. Temporary help was important, but long-term change required structure. He began by organizing small support efforts, providing regular meals in a more organized way, ensuring that people had access to basic necessities. It wasn't a huge operation at first, but it was consistent, and consistency mattered. As time passed, he expanded his efforts. He worked with local groups, people who had experience in social work, people who understood systems better than he did. Together, they started building something more structured. A shelter came next. Not just a place to sleep, but a place where people could feel safe, where they could access support, where they could start rebuilding their lives. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The city began to notice. At first, it was small mentions, local conversations. Then it grew. People were curious. Who was behind this? Why was it happening? When his story became known, it surprised many. A homeless man who had found a lottery ticket and used it not just to change his own life, but to create opportunities for others. It wasn't the kind of story people expected. But what truly changed the city wasn't just the money, it was the mindset. His actions started conversations about how homelessness was viewed, about what real support looked like, about the difference between temporary help and long-term solutions. People who had never paid attention before began to look closer. More support followed. Donations, volunteers, partnerships. What started as one person's decision grew into something much larger. Years later, the impact was visible. Fewer people sleeping on the streets in certain areas, more access to support systems, more awareness about the issue. It wasn't a perfect transformation, but it was meaningful. And through it all, he remained grounded. He didn't see himself as someone extraordinary. He saw himself as someone who had been given a chance and chose to use it in a certain way. When people asked him why he didn't just focus on his own comfort, his answer was simple. He knew what it felt like to have nothing. And once you truly understand that, it's hard to ignore it in others. His story became more than just a moment of luck. It became an example of what can happen when opportunity meets intention. The lottery ticket was just the beginning. What he did next, that's what changed everything.